Coming up next, a study shows that those aged 50 and above are a largely untapped market. And when it comes to advertising efforts, we'll find out why after this break. Welcome back to the program. Now, they are a force to be reckoned with, those who are aged 50 and above.
And not only is their population growing rapidly, they also have money to spend. Their total wealth is estimated at more than $2 trillion.
Wow, yet this group has been largely neglected by advertisers and marketing executives. And these people tend to focus on the younger generation, says the Silver Group. It's a business consultancy.
Now, it doesn't make sense when there's all that disposable income out there. So let's find out why. And this morning, we have Silver CEO Kim Walker with us. Good morning, Kim. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
So tell us, why then are people not targeting and trying to work for this $2 trillion out there?
It's baffling. You've got a market that's actually growing by 33.5% over the 10 years from 2008 to 2018. Huge compound annual growth in spending power, and yet most marketers are ignoring it. And I think there are a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, it's probably to do with history and habit. Marketing as a discipline sort of came of age after the Second World War, which is when, of course, most of the baby boomers were born. And so we've always, as businessmen, looked at younger consumers coming into the world as being the future of a brand. But the world has changed, and now we're actually seeing shrinkage in younger consumer groups while the older groups grow. And we're sticking to old habits. So I think businesses are missing a big opportunity, and that's what Silver Group's all about.
Do you also think it's because businesses are stereotyping, thinking that, you know, as you grow older, you know, you retire, you have less money, therefore you're not going to spend?
I think that's exactly right. That's a good point. And I think, you know, we can safely say that we are not our parents' parents. You know, we are very, very different now. 50-plus people have grown up as baby boomers. They've really challenged the world. They've invented a lot. They've created rock music. Look at Madonna, look at Michael Jackson. These are 50-plus. And they're very, very different people than our parents were. And I think businesses have failed to wake up to this.
Well, one of the, I don't know, it's not really a myth, but I mean, as you get older, you tend to get stuck in a routine. You only like certain products. You tend to be rather fixed in your ways. And marketers will say, well, there's no point trying to market to or preach to the unpreachable, so to speak, because it's not going to change their ways. What's your take on that?
I think that's absolute nonsense, quite frankly. I have many friends in their 60s who've recently switched over to Apple Mac, you know, because it's easy to use. Not because it's youthful and cool, but it's easy to use. And I myself use an iPhone because I happen to think it embodies all of the principles that Silver Group champions, which is universal design.
Or then if they say maybe it's not sexy, it doesn't work for our brand image, we don't really want to be associated with seniors.
Well, this is probably something that's largely driven by the fact that most people in marketing and communication organisations, probably average age is about 32. And as mature, experienced marketers, we have the ability to watch a bit of MTV, look at a few websites, and imagine what it would be like now if we were a teenager, because we've had that experience. Nobody has had experience at being old. And so they can't relate. And so it takes, you know, older people like me to advise companies on how they should address a market like this.
That's sort of a change of mindset as well, because you've never been there, so therefore you sort of need to shift yourself away from where you are currently. Well, you did a recent study of seniors living in Asia Pacific region. Were there any surprising findings that you found, or what did the respondents say when it came to what they hated most about?
Oh gosh, where to begin? I've got so much information, but I think the really interesting things were, first of all, a profound difference between Anglo-Saxon and Asian cultures. Anglo-Saxon attitude to retirement is very much about me, myself and I. I've done my thing in my life, I've helped out my family, now it's my turn. And of course, with the Confucian ethic in Asia and most Asian countries, that's not the case. People still have an obligation to family. And I think the important thing is it doesn't mean that they won't consume and they won't spend. They'll just spend it in different ways. It'll be more conservative, it'll be a little bit more, more discreet, if you like. I think the other thing, the overall finding, which is a lesson for any business people watching, is that the number one thing that these people dislike about the factor of getting older is being referred to as an old person. We don't think of ourselves as being old. I think the other aspect is that all of these people are not the same. If I said to you, let's have a look at a picture of someone in the age band between 0 and 30, you'd say, well, that's ridiculous, because it could be a baby or it could be a married man or woman. But that's what we'd often do when we talk about older consumers. We show a very old, grey-haired person and assume that all older people are like that.
Well, I guess it's because you stereotype again. Yeah. When you say old, you slow down and therefore you're less able or less capable, you're dependent, versus when you're young, you know, you take more risks and you're willing to take on more.
And it's not true, right? Because I know what you mean. I mean, just the other day, I mean, I'm 37 now, and I still feel really young in that sense. But then the other day, I was at the shop and the guy called me uncle. You know, and that's like so I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here, you know? And then I suddenly realized that I had been put into that older category without them even knowing anything about me. So is it also an understanding gap? We're not knowing what so-called, I mean, seniors are like, or what they like, what they're looking for. We don't understand that.
Well, I think absolutely. I think, again, we're not your parents' parents. We're a very, very different kind of person, particularly the baby boomers. And let's face it, most of us are still earning solid incomes, probably at the peak of our earning careers, and yet marketers are still switching off their marketing efforts at 39 or 45. Why? Doesn't make sense anymore when the business and the population and the money is moving older.
Well, very quickly then, if we want to target these, 50-year-old and above, what is the strategy that you should take? Are they more conservative? Should we take a conservative approach to marketing and PR?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, but first of all, to address that point, they're not all the same. So just as we would with any other consumer segment, we have to segment them into attitudes and behaviours, and they are very, very different. And they're also different in terms of life stage between the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and beyond. But over and above that, at Silver Group, we talk about 3 principles. One is universal design, which means products and services that cater to the needs of older consumers and deliver them, but in a way that doesn't make the user feel old. Like an iPhone would be a classic example of that. The second thing is ageless marketing. So consider the needs of consumers as they are getting older in terms of the size of the font on the labelling, or the type size on the labelling, or the instruction booklets, the lighting in store, where you place your product on a shelf, and those sorts of things. And finally, it's inclusive communications. So communicating, whether it's advertising, PR, or websites that don't, by the use of unnecessarily young talent, exclude people who are older and make them feel like they don't belong.
I think altogether the age factor should be just out of it. You know, if you tell a person you're matured or you're wiser, it already appeals.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess you have to have a certain cutoff when you become too wise or too mature, you know. I mean, is there a cutoff point then? Would you say, should we stop? Is there a certain age group that may not be marketed to at all?
I think the answer to that is definitely no, because there are going to be different phases. Remember, when we were babies, right, how much money did you spend? Not much, but money was spent on you. And I think we just reverse that around. So when we get to old age, we are going to have younger people or our own pensions supporting us. So there will always be somebody that is catering to the needs of these older consumers, regardless of whether they're young, fit and healthy, like I like to think I am, or at the end of their twilight years.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming in this morning.
It's a pleasure.